Julia is 30. When she walks into a room of people, the room turns toward her. She laughs louder. She speaks with more emphasis. She tells stories in which she's always the protagonist. She cries at a song just as easily as she lights up at a joke. And at the end of the evening, when she's left alone in her car, she feels an emptiness she can't recognize because she was seen all evening, and yet somehow it doesn't seem to have counted. To those around her, Julia is dramatic, attention-seeking, always on stage. These are the words she's heard all her life, from friends, from family, and more recently from her ex-partner, when he told her he could no longer breathe next to her. Julia cannot explain herself, not because she doesn't want to, but because she never learned to do it any other way. Drama, to her, is the only language she ever learned for being taken seriously. Today, this is about histrionic personality disorder, a deeply stigmatized, badly understood condition, and one that is, surprisingly, controversial even in the clinical world itself, about what it actually is, what it isn't, and why the label attention-seeking misses, most of the time, the real pain behind it. If you've ever wondered whether someone close lives always on stage, or if you yourself have been accused of being too much, this episode will give you a clarity a 1-minute clip cannot. Let's try to step into Julia's mind for a moment, not to excuse her, but to understand her. When Julia was 6, she was the third child in a crowded family. The older sister was the calm and clever one. The younger sister was the small and delicate one, and Julia was between them, naturally invisible with no clear role. The only time her mother held her was when she came home from kindergarten crying. The only time her father stopped what he was doing to listen was when she had a spectacular fight with the older sister. The only time she was seen was when she made noise. By the age of 8, Julia had already learned, without realizing, the lesson that would shape her entire life. If I don't make a scene, I don't exist. If I speak loudly, I am heard. If I cry dramatically, I am comforted. If I laugh noisily, I am noticed. And if I do none of these, the world walks past me without seeing me. Drama, for Julia, is not a choice. It is not a calculation. It is the only language she ever learned for being taken seriously. And now at 30, she still speaks that language, even when it is no longer necessary, even when it pushes people away, even when it exhausts her. Because a language learned in childhood is not unlearned by willpower alone. It is unlearned only through therapy, slowly, patiently, in which you learn, gradually, a new language, the one in which you exist without making a scene. In clinical psychology, there is a precise name for Julia's pattern: histrionic personality disorder, or HPD, the abbreviation from English. It appears in DSM-5-TR, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition text revision, published in 2022. Diagnosis requires 5 of 8 criteria: discomfort when the person is not the center of attention, sexually provocative behavior inappropriate to context, rapidly shifting and superficial emotions, use of physical appearance to draw attention, impressionistic speech, full of adjectives, poor in concrete detail, self-dramatization, suggestibility, meaning easy influence by others, and a tendency to consider relationships closer than they actually are. We must say clearly, 1 or 2 of these characteristics do not mean the disorder. We all have days when we want attention. We all, occasionally, dramatize. The disorder appears when the pattern is persistent, present for years, across most areas of life, and produces real suffering, both for those around and for the person themselves. Clinical prevalence is about 2 to 3% of the population. And here enters an important nuance which we'll address separately. Women are diagnosed 4 times more often than men. This is not because women have the disorder 4 times more often, but because the same behaviors are perceived differently in women and men. We'll return to this. Modern attachment research, a field founded by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth in the 50s to 70s, has shown something important about how an adult's relational patterns form. The way parents respond to a child's emotional needs in the first years shapes an internal system of expectations that lasts a lifetime. And in people with histrionic personality disorder, recent research published by the Attachment Project has confirmed a specific pattern: anxious, preoccupied attachment. This means, in brief, a child who learned that parental love is unpredictable. It comes sometimes, it leaves at others, it cannot be counted on. And in this uncertainty, the child discovers, through repeated attempts, what draws attention: noise, drama, suffering expressed loudly. In an adult, this translates into a deep fear, ever present, though rarely acknowledged. If I am not visible every moment, I will disappear. I will be forgotten. I will be abandoned, not by someone specific, but by everyone, en masse. That is why Julia cannot stand an evening in which no one speaks to her. That is why she asks her partner to tell her 10 times a day that he loves her. That is why, when she is ignored 5 minutes at a party, she feels a world is collapsing. And this overturns how we should understand her behavior. The popular label says attention-seeking. The clinical label is more precise and more painful. She seeks confirmation that she exists. These are two very different things. Attention is something you want. Confirmation that you exist is something without which you feel you disappear. And that difference is the difference between caprice and desperation. Julia is diagnosed with HPD. Christian, a 35-year-old man, has almost exactly the same behaviors. He speaks first in every group, tells dramatic anecdotes, flirts with waitresses, cries spectacularly when his deceased father comes up, posts many photos of himself at the gym in good lighting. Christian is not diagnosed with anything. Christian is a charismatic guy, a bit extroverted. The difference between the two perceptions is one of the most documented gender biases in all of psychiatry. Women are diagnosed 4 times more often with histrionic disorder than men, and research, including recent papers in specialist journals, suggests that there is no real 4-fold difference in prevalence. There is a 4-fold difference in interpretation. Why? Because at the root of the diagnosis lies a cultural judgment about how a woman should behave. A woman who speaks loudly, who reapplies lipstick before entering a room, who cries, who flirts, is too much. A man who makes exactly the same gestures is self-confident. The same behaviors, 2 radically different evaluation grids. And here we must say something uncomfortable for those who use the term lightly. When you label a woman as histrionic, be very sure you are not just using the modern version of the old word hysterical, a word scientifically rejected for decades, but which in many minds still explains a woman who does not conform to social expectations. The word was changed. The prejudice, too often, was not. This does not mean histrionic disorder doesn't exist. It exists, it's real, it has clear criteria, it produces suffering. It only means it must be used with great care, and by specialists, not by anyone after a short online list, especially when we're talking about a woman. We have to be honest here. Histrionic disorder is one of the most difficult personality disorders to treat. Clinical literature, including recent Merck guidelines, openly acknowledges that therapy's effectiveness is modest, not zero, modest. This is not the news you want to hear, but it's the news you deserve. Why is it difficult? Because the person with HPD rarely comes to therapy on their own initiative. They come because they've been left, because a relationship has broken, because a partner has set the condition. And once there, it's very hard to focus, because in the therapeutic relationship, they reproduce the same pattern they live everywhere else. They want attention from the therapist. They seduce them without realizing. They idealize them. Then they devalue them. And if the therapist doesn't react with the expected drama, the person feels they are not being taken seriously, and they leave. The therapy that works best, according to the literature, is long-term psychodynamic psychotherapy. That is, a therapy that explores unconscious conflicts, the origins of childhood wounds, and teaches the person to see them one by one. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, the abbreviation from cognitive behavioral therapy, has more modest results on this specific disorder, but can help in learning practical skills of impulse management. The most important thing to say to a person with HPD who comes with hands on head and asks, "Is it possible?" is the following. Yes, real progress is possible. Not complete cure, progress. The slow learning of a new language in which to be seen without making a scene. The ability to sit in the quiet of an ordinary evening without feeling that you're disappearing. The ability to receive attention in small, normal doses without perceiving them as insufficient. This is what therapy can give, and it is a lot. And if you are the partner, the friend, the child of someone with HPD, a few essential things. Don't enter the drama to calm it down. That reinforces it. Respond with calm, brief presence. Don't accept being exhausted. Your limits are part of what can help them. And don't ask for therapy for someone else so that you can have peace. Ask for therapy for yourself so that you remain whole next to them. Julia, whom we spoke of, has been in psychodynamic therapy for a year now. She says the first moment she felt something new was one Sunday when she sat alone in her kitchen for 40 minutes without touching her phone, without calling anyone. 40 minutes in which she was seen by no one. And yet she didn't disappear. That was when she cried for the first time, not for spectacle, but in relief, to discover that she existed even when no one was looking at her. Christian, whom we spoke of, has never been to therapy. He probably never will be, because society rewards him for exactly the behaviors for which it punishes Julia. This is perhaps the most painful observation of today's episode. The same childhood wound, invisibility, produces two completely different social destinies depending on who carries it. And if you are a woman and you've been told all your life that you are too much, dramatic, attention-seeking, I want you to hear this clearly. You may have histrionic traits worth looking at gently in therapy, or you may simply have a vibrant personality that a narrower world cannot bear. The difference is made by a specialist, not by a label slapped on by someone who doesn't know you. And if you yourself have recognized yourself, man or woman, in the description of Julia or Christian, hold on to one thing, not the label. The real question is, why did I learn that to be seen, I had to make a scene? And the answer to that question, found with a good specialist, is exactly the step at which learning begins to be unlearned. Tell me in the comments, without names or details, have you ever encountered this gender trap, judged or forgiven for the same gestures, depending on who you were? And if this episode helped you clarify something, pass it on. There is so much noise on this subject that clear information reaches people with difficulty. Subscribe. Every week we talk about things that genuinely matter. See you next episode.